Welcome to All Things AI. My name is Ishan, and this is the 12th episode of the All Things AI podcast. Today, we have Attorney Matt Mishak, who's the owner of Mishak Law and who spent 11 years of his career as a prosecutor and as a chief prosecutor. He's also the organizer of the Ohio AI Hub, a group whose purpose is to educate, enlighten, and connect on AI. And today, he's here with us to discuss the efficacy of AI regulation and the potential that AI has in the field of law. Welcome to the channel. It's an honor to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah. So this will be posted in a few days, but for everyone watching this, I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season. And I'll just start off by asking Attorney Mishak, how was your New Year's?
Yeah, it was great. It's always good to have some time off. It never lasts long enough, but likewise, Ishan, I hope you had a good holiday break, and I guess we're getting ready to start the new year and get back to work.
Yeah, in a few days. So with that being said, we can move into the first portion of today's interview, which is going to be the intersection of AI and law. So earlier off call, we talked about your experience with building GPTs. And on a general note, I just want to ask, what GPTs have you built or even experimented with, and specifically those centering around in the law field?
Yeah, of particular interest to me are GPTs that involve tools that allow us in our law firm to produce results quicker for our clients. So one of the GPTs, and I'll put it up here for you.
You should have screen sharing permissions and everything.
Yep, here we go. Okay. So one of the GPTs we designed, Ohio has expanded their sealing of the record, or as some states call it, expungement. There's some nuanced differences there, but a lot of people want to know, hey, am I eligible to have my prior criminal history sealed, right? It is a meandering path, sometimes a difficult to determine that. That's why you need a lawyer to do that. But this GPT, you can put in your criminal record. For example, I have felony drug possession charge from 2005, and I seal it. Okay. So what it's going to do is I've put a knowledge bank in here, and on these GPTs, you can actually put into 20 files. So it's going to analyze the knowledge bank, as you can see on the screen share there, and it's going to tell you with that conviction if you're eligible for sealing the record. So you can see it scans there. It's searching some pretty robust knowledge banks. Now, this could be used not only as a tool if you're trying to see if you're eligible to have your record sealed, but also for an attorney trying to advise a client. So there's a pretty robust legal resources in here. I know
So I
it's
think
taking.
to characterize it, it's really like a tool that lawyers can put to use to maybe even speed up their own work, right? And as like a assistant, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that instead of the lawyer going through all of that, obviously with GPTs and any artificial intelligence, you want a human to verify the information. It sometimes can be prone to hallucinations or missteps, but this is a shortcut to help get it, get you a little bit more information more quickly. So you can see it's analyzing it there, and talking about waiting periods and rehabilitation and all the. So it's a handy tool to get you a very quick answer that this research probably to get to this point probably would take an hour and a half for attorney normally.
Wow. Yeah, and we saw that that took like a minute or two, so really fast. And I think that's what AI really is for, I guess, even on a general note. Um, I guess with that being said, I really want to look onto like even building off of this, the financial viability of law firms and then with AI. So do you believe that law firms and practices specifically targeted towards AI will be a financially viable tool in the future, especially as AI continues to get more powerful and bigger?
Absolutely. I think that AI is going to be very disruptive. And I think that a lot of companies, individuals, they're going to be looking for learned advisors. I think that you're going to see that um, companies are looking to different law firms to address um, how AI is being implemented to make sure that privacy is covered, make sure they have policies and procedures, as well as, for their employees to use AI. I think all of these are going to be very important. The increasing complexity of AI as it relates to legal issues is going to be something that's going to be more and more complicated. The growth in AI deployment across industries is going to feed that. Of course, there's going to be a regulatory evolution, right? You're going to have to keep track of the different regulations that come out, and you're going to need to make sure you're complying with that. Content marketing, all of this is going to come in. You're going to need a legal team to know on all these fronts. And again, we're already seeing the beginning of specialized practices in this area.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And then I think on the regulatory note, which we will get a bit more into later on, I was really looking at, I guess, kind of in the intersection of AI and law, one thing like trademarks, for example, because I saw that Google for like election, the 2024 election, which is obviously going to be huge, just taking place in like towards the end of this year, is really gonna, if anything that is on Google that uses AI is now gonna have to be required, and there's gonna have to be like an AI trademark on that. So I'm really interested to see how law and then is going to play a role in what people do with AI, and specifically how I guess AI is going to be impacted by law. And I guess we even discussed this a bit, I guess, in your answer to the previous question. But I was just wondering what you think will be the biggest use cases of lawyers in the AI industry, just like on a general basis.
Yeah, so some of the uses that we're seeing is document review and legal research. So when you have documents, a lot of times you have people that are analyzing very voluminous documents to try to find specific facts that relate to the case. AI has proven itself to be just fantastic with this in this regard. And as far as legal research, being able to analyze the law, all of lawyering is really taking the facts in the law, comparing those two, and making arguments on behalf of the client, at least as it applies to litigation. So AI can take into account the fact pattern and look at the different cases that are out there, and even draft legal analysis based on that. So in a lot of ways can do what a law clerk has done in a lot of cases. I don't think it's going to replace law clerks, but it's going to be a springboard to get better results for the client. I mean, I don't think law is of any difference in that way. Contract analysis to check a contract for, hey, we represent party A, evaluate this contract and see if there's any problems in this contract that maybe we want to alter this, or any concerns. Indeed, in my own practice, we have utilized AI to see what the efficacy is, and it's been very good. It's identified actually things that a lawyer quite honestly might miss on a cursory review. Predictive analysis, right? So artificial intelligence can handle large data models, right? That it can take into account what has happened in 50 of the last cases that have involved these issues. So we can predict what's likely to, the case is likely to have this result. And therefore, trials are to be avoided if you can. They're long, they're expensive. So if you and I were able to determine, hey, what's going to happen in this trial? Why have the trial? Why not just talk about what the likely result is going to be? And that lends itself to dispute resolution, which is really everywhere where everybody wants to get a fair resolution to the case.
Yeah.
So it can predict the results here. Legal drafting assistance. So if you could imagine that there's a fact pattern in legal research and a procedural history in a case, all the things that go into drafting a legal document, AI can be trained to analyze these for a specific case and generate these documents. It's quite amazing, actually. Compliance monitoring, we talked about regulation. So if you're going to implement a new policy for a company, you can have it trained on the regulations that affect a particular industry, and have the AI be able to make sure that whatever you're writing, whatever you're drafting, your policies and procedures are compliant. Access to justice. Lawyers are expensive, and a lot of people have legal needs that they can't afford. So as far as routine answers to legal questions, AI, in fact, the example I gave you with the Ohio expungement analyzer, that could be something that, somebody has a felony conviction, they can get it off their record. They could, felonies are one ways that, people that stop people from rising up in a company or making more money. And they may not be able to find out very easily. They may not be able to afford an attorney to find out if they're eligible. So perhaps they use a tool like that, and they have better access to justice. Having sort of a lawyer in your pocket is scary as that might be to people in my field. These learned professions are being springboarded by AI, and it's just something we have to address and talk about. Dispute resolution, we can, in the same way that we predict maybe in a result in a case and decide how we're going to resolve it. If you and I have a dispute and we know that if we go all the way through litigation in the courts, how it's likely to resolve itself, how much it's going to cost us in attorney fees to get there. Often even the marginal winner in litigation is a loser because litigation is, very expensive. Another way I think it'll be used is client relationship management, so that, we have chat bots that are responding to routine questions. Quite amazing, actually. I think that there should be disclaimers on artificial intelligence, so we know that it's artificial intelligence, at least for the time being. We're living in a world where we can't really trust our eyes anymore. If we see a video of something or a photograph of something, traditionally in the law, these have been the most reliable forms of evidence, right? Video or photographic documentary evidence. But now, because of Midjourney and other artificial intelligence video generation platforms, we're seeing that you can actually make videos and photographs that maybe can't be determined to be deep fakes, that they look real and we can't say otherwise. So it's going to be, important for that, especially in the upcoming election, right? People make decisions on what they see, so and hear, and if that can't be trusted, everyone has to have a seat at the table and be able to get involved. And that's really actually, not to plug the CSHAM, but that's really one of the reasons that we started the Ohio AI hub that you talked about, so that people can learn about it, understand it, and be armed in the new economy, if you will.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And that's even like half the purpose behind my podcast, is to ensure that everyone, when they deal with AI, knows what's going to happen and exactly how to use it. And then I guess really looking to a real example of how law will play a role in the AI industry, I would just want to look at what's happening between the New York Times and OpenAI, because it's obviously a lawsuit, right? And so we saw what happened just a few days ago when the New York Times decided to sue OpenAI. And actually, on a side note, I'll be making a video about this in a couple of days to cover the entire situation. But I guess getting back to the situation itself, really to provide a brief synopsis, this lawsuit is over copyright infringement because OpenAI used New York Times articles to train their chatbots, and the New York Times feels that obviously it was copyrighted content and this wasn't allowed. So I guess connecting back to the New York Times OpenAI debacle, do you think we're going to see AI companies keeping an army of lawyers, specifically like big tech AI companies like OpenAI, specifically in preparation for situations like those between the New York Times and OpenAI?
I do. I think that AI companies are going to have to start paying more attention to where they're gathering their data. What's interesting about the case with the New York Times and OpenAI is that there seems to be this dynamic of whether OpenAI's use is transformative. And a lot of times, if it's transformative, it's subject to fair use, and you could use it in that way. And there's a discussion happening, in law school. They would tell us, hey, if you take from one author, that is plagiarism, but if you take from many, it's research. In the area of transformative, is AI transformative? Is this being used in a new way in developing a new train of thought based on the research? Obviously, if you're a musician and you have influences and you write original music, none of that is really original. It's coming from your mind and what you've learned about. In AI, in a similar way, is doing that. But in the New York Times litigation, they mentioned how the OpenAI was actually quoting direct quotes from from the New York Times without attribution. So that that causes is an issue. So I would like this to take a turn, and I do think OpenAI is going to need lawyers, and I think this is something new, very transformative. There's billions of dollars at stake. There's copyright, privacy issues at stake, and I think these are all going to have a lot of concentration. The courts are going to have to deal with how we handle it. So I think there does have to be some legal preparedness. We need to be conscious of IP rights and data use. But I would like to see this take a form where we really take future strategies to avoid litigation. If you saw that NPR had made a agreement with OpenAI as far as the use of and training of their data, and the New York Times apparently reached out to OpenAI in April about this, but they did not meet a resolution. They weren't be able to resolve their disputes. So maybe like NPR had done that, or I'm sorry, I think it was Associated Press, but negotiating licenses and permissions, and that's already been done successfully with a couple other media companies. OpenAI can work on developing its own original data sets, so it doesn't have to depend on outlets like the New York Times.
Yeah.
It can use publicly available open source data, and it has to be transparency and ethical considerations, taken into account with all this stuff. But I think that the New York Times and your question about lawyers, it really goes to a bigger issue that can we contain artificial intelligence? I don't think we are going to be able to do that, because not only are we in a transformative stage as far as protecting privacy and intellectual property rights, but we also are engaged in somewhat, in my opinion, a cold war with artificial intelligence. This is a weapon, and it's going to be developed by other countries. So if we we need to be conscious of that. And I'm sorry my answers are long-winded, Ishan, but I'll
Yeah, and I can definitely agree with that because if OpenAI, it's not necessarily just about like I think the ethical is perhaps the biggest part of the ethical considerations. But even on the side note, OpenAI is gonna have to keep paying hundreds of millions of dollars out to companies if they keep using copyrighted content, obviously, without necessarily I guess getting licenses. So I think acquiring licenses is something that definitely OpenAI should consider because yeah, you have the New York Times, then you'll have the Washington Post, then you'll have the Atlantic, and then it just keeps going on with like a bunch of huge news sources, and that will really create a crisis if I guess AI companies, specifically OpenAI, doesn't acquire licenses when training their large language models. But with that being said, I want to move on to the second portion of today's interview, which is I think is a major consideration, especially with the step that AI is currently taking with getting bigger and bigger. So this is going to be focusing around the efficacy of AI regulation. And the first question I just want to discuss is really when should regulation come into play? Because there's debate concerning whether regulation should wait for a few decades, maybe even until 2050 or 2030, or whether AI regulation should come into effect like right now. So what do you think your take is on this? Do you believe that should come in now or maybe in a few years or so?
Well, so as far as the regulation is concerned, it's usually slow to catch up with new technology. It always is. I was involved in the advent of drone technology, and I saw that the FAA regulations took a while to catch up, and there was some confusion with that. The arguments for immediate regulation, given the rapid advancement of integration in various AI sectors, it would mitigate risks to privacy, as we talked about, security, which is a big thing. A lot of our infrastructure is protected by algorithms that and encryption that maybe AI brings a threat to, uh, ethical use, misuse of AI. So as far as immediate regulation, the way I see it is that if we have some very destabilizing threats to our economy, such as AGI, perhaps being able to work through encryption, and one day you go to your bank account and there's no money in there and no one can say why. I mean, obviously that's a very scary thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think regulation should be pretty strict on those type of things. As far as beyond that, it may be premature in a lot of areas, and it may stifle innovation and the natural evolution of AI technology. But as far as that dynamic is going on, I think that OpenAI and the New York Times and their lawyers are going to be talking about what's at stake here, what is the appropriate protocol, and developing some good compromises. With the Associated Press, I believe that I don't even know if there was any money changing hands there. There's some kind of symbiotic relationship that was established there with OpenAI, and that those developing copyrights and the fruits of their labor, so to speak, was protected in that regard. So I think that we are finding solutions by having people at the table and talking about the real problems. And I think we need to continue that, not just in the context of the New York Times regulation, but in all contexts. We need to get people learning about and talking about this. Now, people talk about how far should AI regulation go. It really should be a balance, in my opinion, of risk mitigation with the benefits of the technology. I think it's going to have to be somewhere in there. I don't think that regulation should necessarily go to the core functions of AI companies, but it may limit the expansion in some ways that protects us. There definitely has to be a balancing. Nobody wants AI to take anybody's the fruits of their labors away. That's not what we want here. I mean, everyone should be paid for their copyrights, but we don't want to hinder innovation. So as long as we don't stifle the innovation that's happening, is very necessary to keep the United States, globally competitive in this space. We need to balance the rights, and I think getting these lawsuits are going to come out. People are going to be talking about it. It's going to bring the topic of AI to the forefront, and all the rights that are at issue will be discussed. And I think that that's healthy.
And I think in the beginning of this answer, you were making a point about the fact that or even a reason as to why we should see regulation is because technology is actually much faster than the regulation that is regulating it. I can really connect with that point because one thing that I was noticing was even this was really an area about detecting AI, like plagiarism, things like that. Because as we make better detectors for like ChatGPT and things like that, when students or even people use ChatGPT in general, like the detectors are never able to actually catch up with how fast an AI model would be adapting to not making it seem like it's a human. Because if you tell ChatGPT, for example, write this like a human, don't write it like a robot, obviously it won't be perfect, but I think at a certain point, like regulation or even like I guess detectors and things like that would need to have to come up to pace with really how fast AI is going if we want to see any real regulation, I guess, take place. And so on the note of there being potential pitfalls with regulatory bills, like bills not being able to catch up to the speed of AI, my question here is, what are some of the potential pitfalls for regulatory bills on AI, specifically like even President Biden's executive order on AI or the EU's AI bill that came out a few weeks ago?
I think the pitfalls would be that legislators are having designed legislation around something that is very, very dynamic, as you mentioned, right? So it's almost as if as the bill hits the desk of the legislator, AI has maybe changed, this technology has maybe changed in a way where it doesn't fit. So the pitfalls could be that it is overly broad and it's going to restrict the technology in a way that it doesn't mean to. So that would be one of the concerns I have, is that when you see how fast technology is developing, we see antiquated laws that don't really apply to how things have changed. Maybe they started in the era of fax machines and now they're addressing emails, right? So how do you apply them? Should they apply? Were they ever intended to be applied that way? AI is developing so rapidly, you wonder if there can be efficacy in regulation, and that's a big subject for debate. How do we do that?
Yeah. And I guess really focusing in on today's final question, I want to address profitability because I think even like I made a video about this a few weeks ago about Sam Altman leaving OpenAI and then coming back like 3-4 days later. And then some of the speculation surrounding this situation was really that Sam Altman wanted to make money off OpenAI, but OpenAI's entire goal is to be a nonprofit and open source. So obviously this is speculation, but if that was the case, I think profitability is something that will definitely play a role in AI regulation because I think I just saw this today. OpenAI is now seeking more funding at $100 billion valuation. And so that's already having OpenAI not only become profitable, but also surpass the valuation of even big tech companies. Because if it was just like a billion, 2 billion just a few years ago, now it's at 100 after ChatGPT. And I think that's just a rapid growth that we've seen. But I think regulation, to some extent at least, is gonna hinder the way that people, or rather companies, try and profit off of AI. So my final question today is, do you think companies will make their best efforts to bypass such regulation, especially if it's going to hinder the profitability that AI has?
I think absolutely. If they feel that the bill is unfair or unreasonably stymies innovation, they'll try to find ways to go around it. They're looking at the profit versus the liability of not complying with the regulation, and those factors, may be balanced. So if it's too restrictive, you're absolutely right. There's a danger that the AI companies would take a posture where they would ask for forgiveness later rather than permission up front, or look to comply with the regulation.
Yeah. The other thing I was wondering was, I guess as far as AI companies go, with OpenAI trying to seek $100 billion valuation, we have so many big tech companies that are obviously like Apple, that's worth over $1 trillion, I think now, and then many other companies that are on their way to reaching such a high valuation. Do you think that in the future AI companies might even take the spot of such big tech companies because of the rapid growth that we've seen?
Well, it's I believe that there's a big potential for that, because when you think about what artificial intelligence really is, there's nothing artificial about it. It is intelligence, right? So human intelligence has been developing technology at Apple, at Microsoft for years. But now the artificial intelligence companies are going to have the best and brightest available to them. It's disconcerting to think about, but the artificial intelligence is going to be smarter. It's going to be better than us, right? So um, big tech companies have competed for the best talent in the past, and those that won out usually won the game because they have the intelligence. That's the resource. So if our OpenAI has technology that can develop products and develop innovations faster than traditional tech methods, they could very well subsume the entire tech industry. Is that the question you're answering?
Yeah, that's basically what I was going at. And I think,
Interesting. It's a very interesting question.
yeah, no, because on one end, we see that there's AI companies that are actually controlled by big tech, because to a certain extent, like big tech companies like Microsoft, for example, are actually investing billions of dollars into AI. But then I'm thinking that there will probably be some AI companies that build off of their own scale and then at some point even overtake these companies because of the fact that obviously AI is a much more rapidly progressing technology than computers or phones ever were. But I guess with that being said, that concludes off today's interview. And thank you so much for being here today. I really enjoyed talking about the regulation and law because that's actually a topic that not many of the interviews I've had so far have touched on.
That's great. Thanks, Ishan. And I appreciate you allowing me to be here. And please reach out again if it makes sense.
Thank you so much. And for anyone watching this, please make sure to leave a like and share this with friends and family.
Yeah, and if you would, please check out, if you don't mind me plugging on your
Oh, of
podcast,
course.
the Ohio AI Hub, which is ohioaihub.com.
Yeah, and I'll leave the link down below and also on the LinkedIn post that I usually make following interviews.